Well, good evening and happy Shabbat to one and all. Have Kirk here. JB is up to his tuchus and alligators trying to get all of the new campuses dialed in technology-wise, and also trying to make it possible for the students in his district of the Dallas area to be able to take online classes. And on our different sides of the world, Kirk, we have our challenges. Where I am in the U.S. Virgin Islands, we have tropical storm Laura that will become Hurricane Laura shortly. And this bad girl is currently about 100 miles due east of us, bearing down on us at about 20 miles an hour. Her outer eye wall will be here in about 4 hours, maybe 5 hours from now. But long before her eye wall is here, we will be experiencing some pretty strong winds. We're expected to get winds in the 60-mile-an-hour range, which is the upper end of tropical storms. And we are right at the eye. The eye of this storm will be right outside of our front door. So this will be our first experience with what is just a breath beneath Hurricane Laura, and it will become, in all likelihood, Hurricane Laura as it passes over us and impacts Florida later. So that's kind of our status here. If we lose internet, you'll understand why. Now, I understand, Kirk, I'm looking at all the fires in California, places burning up again.
It is.
How is life in People's Republic?
Well, it's worse than ever. I tell you, there's, besides the COVID shutting everything down, which is massive. I had a friend came by from San Francisco, and she said to date in the last 4 months they had 5,000 restaurants permanently closed in San Francisco. And some of those are favorite restaurants of hers and nice restaurants, and some of them have been there since the 30s. So that's the economic page on San Francisco, and I'll just give you a couple of things.
And that is just so unbelievably sad, and it's because the liberal governors not only don't have any understanding of business, they have none. They have no understanding of business. They have no respect for business. In fact, there's almost a gleeful approach by these liberal buffoons to finally be able to control the people that have never voted for them, will never vote for them, that they so disrespect. And they're about to get the ultimate rude awakening that without business, there is no politics. Without business, there is no economy. Without business, there is no entitlements. There's nothing without business. And they shut it down, and they shut it down for a virus that turned out to be, well, it's more contagious than the flu. It's not more lethal than the flu. It was the most stupid thing that the world has ever done. Put us a breath away from tyranny, even if we are a breath away or if we're actually on this side of tyranny. Of course, the only thing that didn't shut down is Black Lives Matter. And I would love to have the organizers of Black Lives Matter spend a little time with me here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, the majority of the population is black. There isn't a single white political leader. The governor's black. All of his cabinet's black. There are 17 or 18 senators that run the territory. All of them are black. All the administrators are black. All the government officials are black. And so it ought to be a black utopia, shouldn't it? You know, if the problem in America for Black Lives Matter is that whites are somehow suppressing blacks, and blacks are dying because, well, the police are racist and the judicial system is racist, and the whole thing is
no opportunity
being suppressed by whites, well, then why is it when all of the judges here are black, and virtually all the police are black, and all the government officials are black? I mean, without exception, why is the murder rate here 10 times the murder rate in the continental United States? It's actually 10 times.
Wow.
Why are the roads full of potholes? Why do the utilities limp along and barely work? Why are there no new businesses that are being started? Why are the vast majority of buildings in downtown Christiansted and Frederickstead here on St. Croix shuttered, decaying? If the problem is whites suppressing blacks, why in a community that's all black controlled are the circumstances worse than what they're protesting against? It's a hell of a question, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you can say that about a lot of countries in Africa as well. That,
you go to a country in Africa, and if the prejudice is palpable, and the prejudice here is palpable. I mean, listen, the truth is that even though I suffer fools poorly, and I don't stand down if somebody gets in my grill. The fact of the matter is, I'm a pretty engaging guy, and I am a guy that has worked very hard at not having any propensity to judge people by race. I have none, and I won't even tolerate somebody that does it in my presence. I am very judgmental of failed cultures, failed politics, and failed religion, but not of ethnicity. And so I have lots and lots and lots of friends here, all shades, all preferences, all everything you could possibly imagine. But it doesn't change the fact that the prejudice against whites here is palpable. And if you ask a person to do something and you're paying them to do something and they're not doing it, they're just sitting around, and sometimes they'll just, work ethic's not particularly great, and they say, you can't treat me like a slave. And you go, excuse me, all I'm doing is, since I'm paying you, you chose to do this particular business, whether it's hold a paintbrush or plumbing or whatever it might be. That's a service that we're doing, and you are not doing it, and I'm wondering why you expect me to pay you on an hourly fee, because that's what you're going to charge me per the hour, and you came here voluntarily. And you're getting paid for what you're doing. I don't understand the slave connotation. Perhaps you could enlighten me. But it's pretty amazing. But then, you have just the opposite. Like today, I had to haul away a full dump truck load of construction waste. And the two guys that work for a friend of mine that owns a trucking company, and he sent two of his guys. And the entire time we're working together, they didn't have gloves. I went and got them new pairs of gloves, and the entire time I'm down there throwing stuff in the truck and working with them and sweeping up and doing the like, and we're laughing and cutting jokes and complimented the guy. They just were terrific, and so there's a mix, I guess, like there is every place else. Anyway, so what else is happening in California?
Well, of course, you probably know we had 300 fires, which are absolutely devastating in places that it's not supposed to burn, right down to the 80 freeway where I used to travel between Folsom and Sacramento all the way down to San Francisco, and a place called Vacaville. They lost hundreds of horses and hundreds of, I assume, some cattle as well. They goats, sheep, chickens. People are losing their farm. A lot of people were driving up there as quick as they could to try to get as many horses and things out of the way in their horse trailers and take them somewhere, but there was nowhere to go. Now, that doesn't count the wildlife, the deers and so forth. So the fires were devastating. We've had about 2 weeks of 100-plus weather, like 106, 107, 108, 103, and on and on and on. So it was inevitable that it would happen. And then the LA Times reported there were 11,000 lightning strikes the other day, which set off most of these 300 fires.
I watched some of them, Kirk, and there was like fire tornadoes. It was just.
Oh yeah.
On the news, it was so devastating to watch.
Well, the guy across the street is head of the Homeland Security disaster program. This is my neighbor across the street, and I remember him telling me on the last round of fires, he said they get up to 1,000 degrees. Some of these fires, and then they turn into their own tornado, and it's just you just can't get away from it. It's you've got to really go. But California can't afford this. I had another friend who was telling me today about Lodi. Lodi is the largest winery town in California, probably in the United States, maybe even pressing in the world. What it doesn't grow down there. This is all commercial. You know, they also take in all the wineries from up my way and all the wineries up and down California. They produce grapes and they send them there to be processed. Huge output. The trouble with Lodi right now, she said, is it has become tent city under every overpass and every freeway all the way down to Modesto area. Homeless families. Not just the homeless, the occasional alcoholic or drug addict or something. They have whole families in this tent city. That'll destroy the economy there because no one will want to be there.
Correct.
I tell you, this is a terrible, terrible situation. And it just
California was broke before all this happened, and now it's just devastating.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I'm afraid that's the state of the state. What else can I tell you? It's just
they shut down restaurants again here. After the governor said he wasn't going to do it, and then he 4 days later he did it. And I was out kind of having the last meals at some of my favorite places, and it was just devastating to listen to these restaurateurs and. One said the last time during the shutdown, he has 4 restaurants that he was losing $60,000 a week. A week. He says, it's one of those things that if I stay open for takeout, I'm losing more because I have to have my staff there, utilities, and all that sort of thing. And of course, we just don't make enough money on takeout. Then I lose if I just shut it all down, and yet then I lose my staff, which is what makes my restaurant. And so it's just devastating. There's, I think that we're in a place here that probably in the range of a third to half of the businesses that were shut down now twice aren't going to open back up.
Wow. What's the average number of people that work in, regardless of the pay scale, what's the average, you think, number of people that work in a restaurant, 10 to 15? I mean, they got to have a long shift if they have lunch and dinner. It's got to be at least that many.
Sure. Yeah. You got, 4 or 5 people in the kitchen, 2 or 3 people in front of the house, 7 or 8 waiters and waitresses, plus the people bussing tables, and then the people who wash dishes, keep the place clean, and then there's the ownership that buys the food and manages the place. So it depends on the size of the restaurant, but there's a lot of people, and hospitality is the leading industry in America now. Devastated it, whether it's motels, hotels, airlines. Well, in California, the 2 big companies that started there in California, Lyft and Uber. Both shut down in California.
Wow.
The politics of California, we can't operate here anymore. They're headquartered in California.
I know they built it right across the hospital. I watched them build it right across the office building, right across from Terry's window.
The California government, being the most liberal now in the country, decided that the drivers, who were all part-time workers, had to be full-time workers, and therefore had to have
employees.
Had to be employees and have all of the issues like they want their business to deduct payroll taxes and all that sort of thing. Typical. Let's saddle business with our responsibilities. And the company said we just can't operate. under those circumstances. So we're just not going to serve California.
God.
Well, and you know, the most liberal senator in the country is now the running mate with Joe Biden. And she's the most liberal in the country. You know, welcome to the People's Republic. But we're going to talk about a different kind of person. This person is the most extraordinary person who ever lived. He is the most brilliant. He is the most relevant. He is the most articulate. He is the person who impressed God more than anyone else. He was everything that matters. He was the prophet. He was Messiah. He was and will be king. He was the one that God chose. He was the Son of God. The covenant was literally made for him. I know a lot of people are you know, a little bit upset that I'm fixated on Dode, but I'm telling you, Yahweh was fixated on Dode. And, you know, and if Yahweh is going to be fixated on somebody, then there's probably a really good thing for us to be fixated on.
Yeah. Why? What's about this guy?
Right.
We like so
and
much. Yeah.
That is the case with Dode. And there is just it is so essential for us to convey what's important about this man. And we're going to share his last words. They're in 2 Samuel 23, 1 through 5. And what we're going to find is that Dode is literally the most extraordinary man who ever lived. And it is so important because our mission is to convey the words of Yahweh and his son Dode such that Yahweh's chosen people come back home. Now, there was one of my friends that wrote me this week and said, "Oh, did I say that every covenant member needs to go to Israel?" And that's not what I said. Remember, it doesn't matter where you are, really, because
where you are.
By the time that the time of Yaakov's troubles gets really nasty, you're going to be out of here. But if you are a Yahudim and you're not yet part of the covenant, you need to get to Israel. It's not my opinion. It's not my advice. That is what Yahweh is telling you. You need to get to Israel. It's going to get really nasty. And, of course, the most powerful political movement right now is Black Lives Matter. It has such a strong tug on Americans and people around the world, and it is anti-Semitic. Grossly anti-Semitic. So the world is falling apart. So it is essential for Jews to recognize that the Messiah that they have been waiting for is the Messiah that's already been here. For Jews to recognize that their rejection of Jesus as the Messiah was valid, but their rejection of him as the Passover lamb is deadly. And so they need to change their view about Yosha, Jesus, because he was the Passover lamb. Without the Passover lamb, there is no life. He opened the doorway to life. And when you're looking for leadership, when you're looking for guidance, when you're looking for how to restore a relationship with Yahowah, the person to listen to follow, is Dode. The very heart of Yahudah, the heartbeat of Yahudah. So he is the man that is the antidote for Pauline Christianity. I realized that a very long time ago, Kirk, because the basis of Christianity is actually formed on two planks. One is taking all of the promises that God made to Dode, all the things that Yahweh said of Dode, and misappropriating them taking them from Dowd and applying them to Jesus. That really pisses God off. So it makes God mad. That's a really bad idea to make God mad. But
yes,
by doing that, what is the essence of replacement theology is that if you take the fact that the Son of God is Dowd, you take the fact that the Messiah is Dowd, the King of Kings is Dowd, the second coming is Dowd, the chosen one is Dowd, the Gabor of Yeshaya, Isaiah 9, 6 and 7, the person that is being touted, that's Dowd.
Could only be.
Yeah. And so it is just essential that we realize that Christianity is largely based on misapplying all of the things that Yahweh said about Dowd to a caricature known as Jesus Christ. And by so doing, the Christian Jesus is everything he should not be and is not, including the Son of God, God himself, and the Messiah. And he isn't the one thing he really is, the Passover lamb. The second aspect of Christianity, beyond taking all of these things from Dowd and the essence of replacement theology, is what Paul wrote, which he says the Torah can't save. That the Torah condemns. If you're guilty of one part of the Torah, then you're condemned by the Torah. And therefore, there's this new covenant and this new testament based upon grace. Well, Dowd is absolute proof that you can violate virtually every aspect of the Torah except disregarding Yahweh's name and disregarding Yahweh, disrespecting Yahweh as God, trashing his name, trashing his message. Virtually anything else, you can violate the Torah and still be right with God.
Yeah.
So Dowd is the absolute proof that Paul lied and that the Torah has not been replaced, and the Torah, rather than condemning, saves. So that's one of the reasons that he's so important. And he's also important because the religion that Paul founded to diminish, he said, hey, David is dead and buried. And therefore all the promises made to Dowd, had to apply to his Jesus. By saying that, he condemned everyone who believes him. Everyone who carries around a Bible with a Christian New Testament and the 14 letters that Paul wrote, as well as the 2 Gospels that Paul inspired, Luke and Matthew. Every single person is condemned based upon trusting Paul as opposed to trusting Dowd. So here's the text, and I read this just about an hour ago, and it's hard to even read it without it just tearing your heart out that Dowd's not loved for these things. It says, now these are the last words of the prophet Dowd, the son of Yeshai. These are the last akaron, the final and concluding words, debatim, statements, of the prophet Nahum, Dowd, the beloved, the son, child of Yeshai, to be and to exist, the substance of existence, the one who stands out. There weren't a lot of prophets. In my view, Dowd is the greatest of the prophets. Now, I know there's a line that says that Moshe was the greatest of the prophets. And so, am I contradicting God? No, not necessarily. Because when you read the statement about Moshe being the greatest of the prophets. It says because of the miracles that he orchestrated to free Yisrael from Mitzrayim, the Egyptians. It was a very different kind of situation. Of course, he was the scribe who took down the Yahweh's dictation on the Torah, and then he is actually the voice of the body. And so, and prophecy is retroactive too. Prophecy is not just speaking of future events in the past, it's getting the distant past right as well, because
Correct.
time, Yahweh's view of time, the past, present, future are all now. And so prophecy is every bit about getting the past right as it is getting the future. And of course, he went all the way back to creation. So it's a pretty big swath of time when your first prophecies start 14 billion years ago. That all said, there aren't a lot of prophecies in the Torah. The prophecies, for the most part in the Torah, are dress rehearsals of things like Abraham and Yishak going to Mount Moriah to celebrate Pesach and having the Lamb of God there for them. And Yahweh saying, "Here I am. I will provide the sacrifice." Well, that's obviously prophetic, but it's prophetic within the story of the enactment of the covenant. So there are just not a lot of direct prophecies there. And so if you look at just direct prophecies, just think for a moment about the 22nd and 88th Mizmor Psalm. 1,000 years before it happened, Dode was an eyewitness to the fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, Bakurim. That's pretty extraordinary. And throughout Dode's Mizmor, there are so many prophecies, and Dode is literally the living embodiment of the most prophecies. There are more prophecies pertaining to Dode than anyone else. In fact, I would go so far as to say there are more prophecies where Dode is the subject than all other people combined.
Well, I didn't realize that. Wow.
So if you are trying to say who is the greatest of the prophets, well, Dode's prophecies are not only enormous. Like if you're just talking about predicting the future and having the future predicted in your work, I mean, no one surpasses Yahshua. I mean, Yahshua's prophecies are so sweeping in terms of future relevance.
This will happen. This will happen this way.
Right. But Yahshua is constantly talking about prophecies that pertain to Dode. And so if Dode writes prophecies, and he is the living embodiment of more prophecies than anyone else, in fact, more than everyone else combined, that
puts him
in a special category of prophet.
Yeah.
Now, I also think that so much of Dode, the adversaries that Dode is lashing out against, is Pauline Christianity. Because Pauline Christianity has a greater and more negative influence on Jews. It's responsible for more harassment of Jews than anything that man has ever conceived. The Roman Catholic Church was abusive, to being disgustingly abusive of Jews from the very beginning. I mean, making them wearing distinguishing clothes, giving them no rights, taking their children away, making them live in ghettos, torturing them. There's just no institution that has for such a long period of time, been as not only anti-Semitic, but torturous in their treatment of Jews. So it was essential for God to defend himself, his people, against Roman Catholicism and Christianity, and Dode was the spokesperson. So when Dode is bellyaching about all these different enemies, and Christians get all upset that he's constantly complaining. Well, he's complaining about them. So now these are the last words of the prophet Dod, the son of Yishai. So then declared the one man, the Gabur, the individual, who is part of a larger whole, sometimes indicative of a strong man with the ability to fight, who stood up, was raised up, and was established, by the Almighty and anointed as the Messiah of the God of Jacob, the pleasantly melodious of Israel. Now, can you imagine that being said of you? I mean,
no.
Yeah, and I've got a good relationship. I realize that I've got lots of flaws, and I wish I was a more effective translator. I wish that I had even more and wonderful insights. I wish I was more articulate. I wish that I was better at everything that I try to do for Yah. And yet, even in spite of my failings, Yah and I have got a great relationship. I think he's humored by me. So we're really comfortable together. But this is like a billion miles from what I would ever think of myself. And I've always looked at Dod and said, whatever applies to Dod applies to the rest of us, because he's the exemplar of being a child of God and being part of the covenant family. Okay, but
really pouring it on.
Okay. So then declared the one man who stood up, was raised up, and was established by the Almighty and anointed as the Messiah of the God of Jacob, the pleasantly melodious of Israel. The one man, not one of a number of men.
Not even a man. One man.
Who stood up.
The one, definitely.
Who was raised up and was established by the Almighty. And also anointed as the Messiah.
Messiah.
Of the God
How do you get around that one?
of Jacob, the pleasantly melodious of Israel. How's that for a resume?
That's about all you need. Make it short and sweet. Put it on your business card.
Put that on your business card. I am the one man who stood up, was raised up, and established by the Almighty and anointed as the Messiah of the God of Jacob. And by the way, I can sing really good too.
My good voice.
Okay. So if you want to say, gosh, enough with this Dod thing already, give it a break. Well, how can you do that?
Do people write you that? People write you that, Jonah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. Oh. Absolutely.
Wow.
What
they read?
Move on. Talk about something else. Well, this is what God wants to talk about.
Yeah.
Dod was special, one of a kind. No one understood Yahweh or his Torah better than Dod. That's why he was beloved. But more than this, Dod stood up for God, no matter the consequence. In this regard, he was Yahweh's Messiah, anointed Messiah, specifically designated and chosen, approved and set apart from that which is common. When Dod returns to Israel, Yahudah, Moriah, Jerusalem, Zion, and sometime before I think Dod is going to. That's why Dod. I don't have any support for this, but I think that Dod is going to arrive before Yah. That's just my.
Wait a minute. if he almost has to. Yahweh said, "I can't have that crap in front of me from
Right.
tablets of stone."
Right.
So
and Yahweh
that would imply you
alone.
got to get rid of because and he don't work
right.
alone.
And he doesn't work alone. Yeah, Yahweh does not work alone, and he's not going to tolerate this. But that's my interpretation, because Yahweh's clearly using Dode to clean house.
Yes.
So no question he's using Dode to clean house. The only question is he cleaning house with Yahweh at his side, or is he cleaning house before Yahweh arrives? I don't know the answer to that, but my guess is that it's before Yahweh arrives. And what Yahweh says, two things about Dode, and you translate them, and you just go, no. I mean, I'm impressed with Dode. Yeah, it's true. But when you read these two things, you just go, oh, come on. One is, he says, he will be as brilliant as the sun. Now, you know that during the millennial Shabbat, the celebration of this 1,000 years, which begins really soon. I mean, it's just 13 years away from this broadcast. Do you know that God says there's no need for the sun and the moon anymore?
I am familiar with that.
That we're not going to need their light. Wow. And then he says that Dode is returning as brilliant as the sun. Okay? So, I mean, that's pretty extraordinary. I mean, that's up there in terms of dialing up somebody's brilliance and their importance and their power, their influence. You're not going to need the sun anymore, because my son is going to be as brilliant as the sun. Okay, that's way beyond the New Testament claim that Yosha on the Mount of Transfiguration appeared as light.
Agreed.
When Yahweh says you're going to be as brilliant as the sun, that's big time. Okay. The second thing that Yahweh said is Dode's going to be as God. The Dode will be as God.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty powerful too. Now, for me, that's very comfortable, because I've got a really comfortable relationship with God. I figure, since God wants to be dad and the set-apart spirit wants to be mom, we're going to have a really fun, casual, family-friendly relationship, and I'm going to approach Yahweh and the set-apart spirit as mom and dad, and so that means if Dode's going to be as God, then the approach to him is going to be every bit as comfortable. So I don't view that as imposing, but I do view that as God saying, I told you that I don't work alone. I created human beings because I wanted to have a relationship, and I want to work through people. It's just this is my guy. He's a stand-up guy. This is my guy, and he's going to be as God. That pretty much makes him one of a kind. And when you're considering that, all these things that God said about it, the thing that ought to resonate is the very thing that you said, Kirk. If God makes all this fuss over this one guy, then shouldn't we spend an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out what it is about this guy that would cause God to love him so?
Yeah.
What could be more important than figuring out why God chose this man to be the Messiah, the prophet, his son, his chosen one, the one that represents him when he returns, the King of Kings, the King of Israel, his King, his Messiah, his shepherd, the branch?
Mm-hmm.
What caused God to say, this is going to be the ultimate prophet? This is the prophet I would have more prophecies about than everybody else combined.
Well, why don't we just change it from what would Jesus do to what would Dode do?
Absolutely.
I mean, put it from that perspective.
Yeah, and so we ought to care about that. And we ought
could
to
do
realize
something that Dode does.
That Dode wasn't good. He was tough. He was ornery.
Yeah.
He suffered fools poorly. He fought for his people. He defended them. When they needed to be condemned, exposed for what they were doing. He did that too. He was blunt. Yes. He was bold. He was unapologetic. He was an extraordinarily unique individual. And his passion was writing about what the insights that he learned from Yahweh. So there's a lot we can learn from the nature of this man. And the more characteristics of Dode that we emulate, the more God's going to find favor with us. Right. And God finding favor, when God lays out there's 5 conditions of the covenant. You accept those 5 conditions of the covenant. You attend his Moed Mikra, his invitation to be called out. You respect his name and observe his Torah teaching. You're going to be part of his covenant family forever.
Yeah.
And you might say, okay, so that's good enough. Why do I need to emulate these Dodean characteristics? Well, it's because if you're part of the covenant family, shouldn't you love your mother and father? Shouldn't you want to do what's right and good for that covenant family? Shouldn't you want to take care of your other brothers and sisters in the covenant family and to protect them and to nurture them and support them? And then shouldn't you reach out to others that are part of the chosen people that God wants to have a relationship with and do everything in your power to encourage them to come back home because God wants them to be part of his family? I mean, shouldn't that be your motivation? And if that's your motivation, why not emulate the person that was the best at it?
Point taken.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
The Spirit of Yahweh spoke through me. Okay, now this is the first words of Dode. Prior to this, we've listened to Shamuel write this introduction. If it wasn't Shamuel, it's in his book. And someone that was inspired by God wrote that introduction. The first words of the last words of Dode are, the Spirit of Yahweh spoke through me. Well, folks, that gives life purpose. If you want your life to matter, what you want is the Spirit of Yahweh speaking through you. You know, we've probably more than we should, but we've gone through the prophecies at least twice on this program that are in Yeshaya 11. Yeshaya 11 in its entirety is devoted to Yahweh's use of, interaction with, support of this stem, choder. The stem is to Dode, who is the branch. I don't like a twig is to the mightiest tree that has ever been. And maybe that's why there's a whole chapter of Yeshaya. And when it speaks of the Spirit enabling the choder, I mean, it's this whole laundry list of things that the Spirit is going to do. You know, to help this poor sucker, literally sucker, pun intended. Be effective. Make him quasi-intelligent. Make him quasi-articulate. Cause him to be blunt and bold and courageous and be effective reaching out to people so that what he learns resonates. And Dode was just really simple. Dode didn't need all of that support because he's the branch. And so it just says, as simple as it can be, the Spirit of Yahweh spoke through me. That means that when you read anything in any one of those Psalms or Proverbs that Dode wrote, what you are reading is what the Spirit of Yahweh had to say.
Another reason to listen to Dode, right?
Because what Dode just said is, if you're listening to Dode, you are listening to Yahweh.
No.
That's what he just said. The Spirit of Yahweh spoke through me. I think it's pretty obvious that was the case. Now, the thing that is unique about this, though, is that if you read the Badim words, a terrible Greek term, Deuteronomy, you're reading what Moshe said. But because it's Torah, Moshe's words were inspired by the Spirit of Yahweh. And yet, they all have Moshe's style through them. It was obvious that Moshe was a passionate guy. He was very frustrated with the children of Israel, he loved what he learned from Yahweh, was passionate about sharing it, and that passion comes through in his speeches. With Dode's, his intellect comes through, his personality, his character comes through his words.
Passion.
You read Yirmiah and Yeshaya, Jeremiah and Isaiah. It's very different vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
So Yahweh allows the people he inspires to
flavor.
Let their flavor, their personality to flavor, their character to flavor what they have to say. I was reading something that J.K., one of the more important editors for Yada Yahweh, wrote, and he's kind of on a passion right now, trying to ascertain what really is the connection between the nefesh of Yahweh and the nefesh consciousness, soul, of animals and humankind that causes us to be alive, that causes us to be observant and being able to respond to our environment, that is the essence of intelligent life. And, what is the connection between Yahweh having a nefesh and animals and we having a nefesh that is this spark of life and our unique personality and character, and that is it part of the divine? And it could well be that our souls really are this tiny aspect of Yahweh, the seed of Yahweh in us, that Yahweh wants to come back to him. And Yahweh's soul is so big and so small relative to Yahweh, so big relative to us, that, if lots of souls don't return, it's not going to diminish him, but the more souls that do return, I think it makes Yahweh's soul more complete. But Dode is one of those whose soul was just absolutely intertwined with Yahweh. So the Spirit of Yahweh spoke through me, expressed himself through her words with me. And his words, his statements, and his reasoning, the last was, Debar. This is Milahu, his answers, conveying his focus and relevant content, his proverbs, which characterize the truth, the affairs and matters most vital to him, existed upon my tongue. Make no mistake, when Dode talks, he's speaking for Yahweh. When Dode writes, he's speaking for Yahweh. When Dode sings, he is singing for Yahweh. There are very few men who can make this claim. Moshe was the first, followed by Shamuel, and then Dode. Now, to a degree, not all of the time, but there was a period of time where Elia could make this claim. And boy, does his personality ever come through. Yashaya, Yirmiyah, to a lesser degree, Zechariah, Malachi. There's others that can make the claim, but no one can do it for it. Make that claim for a longer period of time or more robustly than Dowd. He says, the God of Yisrael. It's interesting. He was most Yahud of all Yahud. And Yahud is more important to Yahweh than the rest of Yisrael.
The other tribes.
Dowd was the king and the Messiah and the shepherd of all Yisrael. He served as shepherd and king of a united Yisrael.
Yisrael, yeah.
But it was the united Israel that was almost lost by his predecessor, Shaul.
Mm-hmm.
So the God of Yisrael has spoken to me, saying, the rock of Yisrael is a word picture, conveying symbolic meaning. It's a mashal, a proverb, a parable for man, correctly and appropriately conveying a reverence and respect of God. So who do you think the rock is of the rock of Yisrael?
Well, we used to know what we said the rock was, but I'm assuming this we're talking about Dowd again.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. The God of Yisrael has spoken to me, saying, the rock of Yisrael is a word picture conveying symbolic meaning, correctly and appropriately conveying a reverence and respect of God. So think it through for a moment. The God that we know, is he going to say that the rock of Israel is me, and me exists to correctly and appropriately convey a reverence and respect for me?
No.
I don't think so. It's just not. Would it be appropriate for him to say so? Absolutely. He's God. He's the creator of the universe. Is it appropriate for God to say, it's really important for you to respect me? And so this whole rock metaphor is about you respecting me? Yeah, it would be appropriate. Just not in his nature.
More to the point, yeah.
We ought to view Yahweh with tremendous reverence and respect.
Yes.
But it's Yahweh's desire as the father of the covenant, as Dowd's father, as the one who chose Dowd, to say, this man is a living metaphor, a living word picture, conveying how the benefits really of correctly, appropriately conveying your reverence and respect for me.
I have a feeling that the reason they keep saying Yessi is brought up so often is more than just because he was his daddy. Mm-hmm. When you look at the Yah and the Shah in the middle and another Yod, so you have a Yad or a Yod, which is a Shin Yad. What you have is Yah's words.
With Yeshe? Yeah, Yeshe means, to stand out and be noticed. So when it says the one man that was established, that stood up, was raised up by God, well, that's what the name Yeshe means, which means to stand up and stand out.
I understand that from the definition, but also if you look at the nourishing words symbolic of the Shin, which is the letter in between the two Yads, then you could just as easily see in it that Yah's words exist eternally. You could see Yah's words on both sides. The Yad is so. Yeshe becomes more than just his dad. The way I kept viewing it, well, I guess they have to do that historically or something. I mean, it has a more special meaning than that. And then, as you pointed out before, it does exist like Haya. So
I don't think Yeshe means anything other than what his name means. Anything you can derive from his name is fair game. Nothing. There's nothing to benefit from what he said, because what Yeshe said was really terrible. As a matter of fact, Shamuel was afraid of him.
Yeah, I understand that, but the word itself that he used as his name it's got a yod on both ends, which always is symbolic of Yah's name. It's the first letter and the only part thing, and then if you have nourishing words in between it, then it has a meaning all to itself as a word.
Right. I agree. That's how we're agreeing. We're saying that the thing that matters about Yeshe is his name.
Yes.
Right.
Not Yeshe himself. He's a dog.
Right. Yeah, he's a dog, but God gave him a really exceptional name. As a matter of fact, Yeshe is one of those words, like his son Dod, like Haya and Bayam, which are 3-letter words that read the same. Are double-sided. So you're right. Yeshe is the Y, the SH, which is 1 letter, the Shen, and Yod again. Dod is the left, the doorway, the connecting, the wall, which is
the increase,
to increase, and to secure the doorway. Mayim is an interesting word that because the creation account, which is what I'm translating now, I'm just retranslating everything on the creation account, is Mem, Yod Mem. So it's the exact same thing. It's water, the hand of God, and water reads the same left and right to left. As a matter of fact, what's interesting about all the references to water, all Mayim really is the plural of to question. Ma, M. So it's the pluralistic questions, probing questions about water, trying to understand water. That water is the source of life. That water is the universal solvent for cleansing. That water is unique in the universe. So stars were literally born of water. We, in our mortal lives, are born of water. Our bodies are 70% water.
Yeah.
Water.
Yeah.
Water. So it's like Haya, the basis of Yahweh's name. Yeshe is the same thing as is Dod. There's not a lot of Hebrew words that fit into that pattern, but when you find one, they speak of eternity. They speak of something that is always true, beginning to end, from the future to the past, from the past to the future. So, Dod says, the rock of Yisrael is a word picture, conveying symbolic meaning. I think that the rock of Yisrael is Dod. I know that the cornerstone is Dod. Christians want to make Jesus the cornerstone.
Jesus,
But the fact is that Dod is the cornerstone. And so I think Dod is also the rock here. That he's a word picture conveying the symbolic meaning of what it's like to correctly and appropriately develop a loving and respectful relationship with God. And that's what Dod did. He had a wonderful relationship with God. God didn't expect it to be perfect. No. God didn't. And one of the nice things about Dod is that my life is full of distractions. There's lots of things I like to do. I mean, it's true that I'll wake up at 5 to 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'll walk from the bedroom to my office, and I'll start the day translating. It's my favorite time to translate and to write. But go through the day, and I'll end the day translating, and I'll translate for an hour, and maybe deal with the distraction. I'm doing a lot of remodeling now in a house, and so there are distractions during the day. Dod's life was filled with distractions. I'm luckier than Dod. I have one woman in my life. Dod wasn't so good with that. He had 8 wives and 10 concubines. So Dod wasn't as lucky as me. Dode had met Leah, he probably would have made the same choice too. But so I got a better deal there. But the very fact is that with 8 wives and
that was smooth, by the way.
Dude was distracted. Well, it's true. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. Yeah, absolutely true. I wouldn't trade with Dode for all the Bathshebas in the world. I would. In fact, I wouldn't even trade with Dode for in terms of prominence in a relationship with God. I wouldn't. Well, we all want God to be proud of us. We all want God to say, "That's my son. I'm proud of him. That's my daughter. We have a wonderful relationship." Yeah, we all want God to. We always want our Father to think positive things of us. But this notion of you're cleansing the world for Yah's return. You are my chosen one. You're my Messiah. You're my King.
A lot of weight.
Yeah.
A lot of weight on your shoulders.
Yeah, that's a lot of weight, man. That's a lot of daggone responsibility. And so he can be. I'm happy for him to be the cornerstone and the rock of Israel. But he certainly does point the way for us to follow. And it's clearly, Dode has a marvelous relationship with Yah, and it shows that, and that was the point I wanted to make, was that Yah isn't interested in dominating our lives. Look at his relationship with Adam. He dominated Adam's life and said, this is probably not the best deal in the world. Let's give him a pretty. And I'm sure that Adam had fun with pretty. I'm quite certain that Towrah was a marvelous distraction for Adam. And so you look at all the defensive wars that Dode fought, all of the political intrigue, heck, I'm remodeling a house here. Imagine building the home of Dode on Mount Moriah, Dode's home. Building Jerusalem as the capital of the United Israel. I mean, dude had distractions. And yet God was delighted with the content of his Mizmor and Psalms. So we don't have to be, and should not be, slaves to Yahweh. We can have lives. He wants us to have lives. He created this world to be marvelously entertaining and beautiful. So, similar to the light of morning, Dode says, similar to the light of morning, when the sun rises, during the early part of the day, when it's best to observe, to consider, and to reflect before, without obscuring phenomenon, this brilliant light radiates knowledge. From the rain, green and vibrant growth emerges out of the land. I don't think that probably resonates with everyone. Everyone has lives. I mean, right now you're virtually a full-time support person for Terry, your wife. And so your time, you're not, after 4 hours sleep, you're not waking up at 5 and can't wait to go and translate. I mean, there's good morning, God, and good God, morning. You're more in the good God, morning. Yeah, and I'm more in the good morning, God. And so Dode was good morning, God. So he is. His view of this is the same as mine. Now, I would have to tell you that, and I know that one of these days, Kirk, you're headed to paradise here in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I will tell you that I'm a fuddy-duddy. It gets to be late, and I'm just toast. Like after this show, once I do the Friday evening Shabbat programs, almost all of the time I'm spent. I pour what little I have. This is important to the family, and I pour myself into it. And by the time this is done, and I'm making 3 tracks, I'm going to bed. So there's a reason I can get up and it's good morning, God, at 5 to 6 o'clock in the morning. It's because I go to bed early. Yeah. It's just kind of my approach. I don't know if Dode was just one of those people who had constant energy. He was the ever-ready bunny and could go all the time and could, he had to take care of 8 wives and 10 concubines. So my guess is that he stayed up later than I do. The fact of the matter is, dude loved mornings. Maybe he loved mornings because he was worn out, God, I need some time. It'll be just me and God. Come on, God, we have some us time. But that's, my mornings are spent doing this. I celebrate the morning. It's the best time for me. And it's one of the things that in the morning, it's just a constant flood of insight. The translations are easy. The insights flow. And if I'm doing this, and I like to do it at the end of the day, too, after a while, at the end of the day, I'm worn down. It gets to be almost a little bit burdensome where I'm saying, okay, I know I should do some more, but God, I'm getting tired, and this is tough. Yeah. So it is true. I'm much better at this in the morning. So this resonates with me. It may not resonate with everybody, but if you are about Yah's business, you may want to listen to Dode's approach. I know his approach works for me. It worked for him. It will likely work for you. But so similar to the light of morning, the aura, the illumination, the enlightenment of morning, of thought and consideration during the early part of the day. When the sun rises, Shemesh Zerah. During the early part of the day, when it's best to observe, consider, and reflect, without obscuring phenomenon, Loab. This brilliant light radiates knowledge. I don't know how many different ways he can tell you. I get up early in the morning, and I like that time, and it's my time to be observant and to consider and to reflect, and I'm not distracted at that time. And that's Yah's brilliant light radiates knowledge at that time. And as a result, I grow, I grow. And not only do I grow, but growth emerges from the land as a result of all of this. And Dode is saying, the more I capitalize on the inspiration I'm getting in the morning, the better it is for life throughout the land. That's what he means by the rain. Green and vibrant growth emerges out of the land. So the transition here is Dode getting up early and considering the prophetic insights, the Spirit and the knowledge the Spirit is providing through him. And the more he radiates that light, the more green and vibrant and more growth emerges from the land.
Let me ask you a question, because I never thought of this very much. But how much during the time when he's writing these things, how many people are actually reading them, have the opportunity to read them in Israel or in Jerusalem?
Yeah, that's really an interesting thought. I made the statement that Leah didn't like earlier this week, and that was that I didn't think that Yahshua had access to Dode's Psalms, that he wasn't reading them, and he would not have been aware of much of the stuff that Dode wrote. while those psalms were preserved, I don't know how well they were distributed.
Mm-hmm.
Elia, and I think maybe my comment was more about Elia, that he wouldn't have had them either. Is it possible that Elia had them? I guess it's possible. But I think it's unlikely. So the question, I've wondered the same thing. How many people actually had access to and read the Torah? How many people had access to and actually read Dode's Psalms? And what strikes me is, I've always said, we have the unfair advantage.
We do.
That if we lived in the time of Moshe, even if we were walking out of Mitzrayim with Yahweh as the pillar of fire and the column of smoke and the voice that spoke out to us, and even if we lived there, or we lived at the time that Dode was king of a united Yisrael, at the peak of Yisrael's security and splendor, we have much greater access to the fullness of Yahweh's testimony and better tools to understand it. And we have this whole opportunity in terms of science and of history. And so I think there's never been a time where it was easier to understand Yah's message, understand Yah's plan, understand the conditions of the covenant. I will go so far as to say, and this is bold, and if everybody disagrees, so be it. What I'm going to say now really puts me out there on a limb, and as a choder, as a little sucker, you can't hang much on a limb like that. But okay, I think that there are things that when Yahshua was predicting the future, and when Dode was predicting the future, that they did not understand as well as we do. That there was no reason
they had no relevance.
Understand.
They couldn't have.
Yes, it was. They had no. So they may have seen something. They would have no way to understand it. Like when Moshe was explaining how stars would be born out of these molecular clouds of water. I don't think
give me a break.
But now we do. We know exactly how that happened and why the molecular clouds of water are so essential, because when there's too much energy, matter can't form. It's got to cool to the point that matter can form. Well, what's the ultimate heat sink in the universe? Water. That's why it's always so moderate and on an island surrounded by water. Water is the ultimate heat sink. And so that's what enabled the energy to cool to the point that stars could form. They're formed. That's when you're looking at a nebula. What you're looking at is water, molecular water, and these beautiful nebula, or the nurseries for clouds. He would have had no way of understanding that. When Moshe was writing the story of creation, and God did these things over 6 days, he would have had no concept of relativity, and that first day was 7 billion years long. No concept of that. But he didn't need to have any concept of it. But we have those tools where we can understand them today. I think that even when we're translating, we're digging into the nuances that Yahshua revealed, that Dode revealed. I think our ability to plumb the depths of understanding and draw knowledge that is relevant to our time is beyond these prophets.
Oh, yeah, as long as you include relevance in our time, absolutely.
Yes. I think
they couldn't know.
We're
they could not know.
Right. That the combination of the words that Yahweh conveyed, in the whole fabric of all of the prophets that he conveyed his testimony through. Inspired as we are by Yahweh's set-apart spirit, that our ability to understand the message that Yahweh was conveying is beyond what do these people recognize. Let me go one step further. There are very obviously 5 conditions of the covenant. You ever read anywhere where any prophet said, I realize there's 5 conditions of the covenant?
Not one.
Not one. There's obviously 5 benefits of the covenant. You ever read anywhere in the prophets where they said there's 5 benefits of the covenant?
No.
There's obviously a direct correlation between the Moed Mikra, the 7 invitations that Yahweh has to meet, and the benefits of the covenant. Have you ever read where any one of the prophets says, you need to view the benefits of the covenant from the perspective of the Moed Mikra?
Never comes up.
No. Does any one of the prophets say that Passover, Pesach, is the doorway to life? Or that matzah is the means of Yahweh removing the fungus of religious and political sin from us so that we can be Bokorim, become firstborn children in his family, and that as a result of that, on the promise of 7 on Shabbat, we are enriched, enlightened, and empowered by God so that on Towrah, we can shout out as part of God's family the truth, exposing and condemning the ways of man while advocating this plan that Yahweh has revealed, which essentially is designed for him to reconcile his relationship with Yada and Yisrael through Kippurim. That is the day to reconcile that relationship so that we can all sukkah, camp out with God for 1,000 years, and that story of from Pesach to Sukkah is the story of Eden. Did you ever read anywhere where they said that is the story of Eden? That God is restoring the earth to the conditions of Eden so that we can all return to what God's view was perfect. He started us in a perfect environment. And so he's returning us there. But do you read that in any one of the prophets? So it's so obvious that it's true. God reinforces it from every possible perspective. Do you read any of the prophets where say the set-apart spirit is mom?
No. But it's feminine word.
But it's so obvious that is the case. There's no prophet that says, there's 3 destinations for human souls.
Not one. And
that the vast majority of human souls will simply cease to exist. And yet says it in so many different ways that that's the only valid conclusion that can be drawn from the breadth of his testimony.
And it's only fair one.
Is for, that those who mislead others, deliberately taking them away from God through religion or politics or conspiracy, end up in Sheol, which is the equivalent of a black hole. And that those who accept the terms and conditions of the covenant and accept his invitations to attend the Mikra, who are Torah observant, become part of Yahweh's covenant family and enter through that doorway into heaven, into life that is Pesach. It is that all of these conclusions can be deduced from Yahweh's testimony, and yet there's none of Yahweh's prophets that are saying it in those very simple and direct terms.
You heard it here first.
But there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is that we're not fooling around anymore. We've got 13 years from now, the summer of 2020, to the time that Dode is returning to clean house.
Yeah.
And
the
vast preponderance of the chosen people are still estranged from God.
Yeah.
Man's running amok. He's destroyed this world. It doesn't matter if you're looking at the response to COVID and the dictatorial response of depriving people of liberty, which is near and dear to God. There's very few things that displease God more than usurping people's freedoms, which is what the response to COVID did. Or to diminish people's ability to work. Work is a real virtue from Yahweh's perspective. Or the idea of Black Lives Matter, and you take a communal approach that we're going to blame man and yet raise up human contrivances, and one of those contrivances is to condemn Yisrael and Yehudim. We are in a period where, with the rise of Islam and Christianity and socialist secular humanism, and now this beast called Black Lives Matters, and the response to a virus, we're at a time where God's message needs to resonate for him to fulfill the promises that he made to Abraham, to Yishak, to Jacob, and to Dod. And so God is providing this understanding because that's the most essential time in all of human history. Now, God even said, for a very long time, I'm going to blind my own people. They're going to be deaf and dumb. And they have been. Blind. You know, all of the 20% of Jews that are religious are completely and totally blind to the testimony of Yahweh. So I do think that we are in a unique circumstance. God said all of these marvelous things about Dod. I mean, this is the best it could possibly get. And yet, in so many ways, our ability to know and understand the message of God is greater now than it was even for Dod. Doesn't make us prophets. We're not claiming that at all. Dod is a prophet. No. We're not. But what we can learn from the prophets now is way beyond what they've been able to learn. And it's like the timeline of Yah's return. It is so obvious of what God did and when he did it and how that plays through the fulfillment of the Moed Mikra and his plan of 6 + 1 = 7. And how you get to 2033 in our pagan calendars as a year 6,000 Yah. There's nobody that's laid it out for you like that. But yet
or even the importance of the Yobel year. I mean, and how that functions. And 50, and you get to, and everyone said free.
Yes. God, and yet, what is the Yobel? What is the Yobel made of? The Yobel is all slaves are freed. Yahweh's idea is, I want freedom for my people. I don't want them told they have to sequester at home. Freedom.
Yeah, and free will.
Don't be afraid of some stupid little virus. Freedom. That's central to the Yobel. What's also, all debts are forgiven. Central to the Yobel. All debts are forgiven. All slaves are freed. And the land, my home, is returned. And then he took the Yobel and said, I want an annual celebration so that you'll understand this plan of 7 sevens + 1. It's called Shabuah, the annual celebration of the Yobel. What happens? We're enlightened, we're empowered, we're enriched. We receive the benefits of the Yobel. And so 40 of these Yobels is 2,000 years. There's 40 Yobel periods that define Yahweh's plan in history. They literally define the human existence on this planet. And they conclude in year 6,000 Yah, 2033. And life from Yom Kippurim and Sukkah in 2033 is radically different than it is now. We are we're returning to a supercharged version of Eden, dramatically empowered, version of Eden. So God wants His people to know. That's why I'm just so grateful that, like recently, we've had Jackie has taken on this responsibility of not only coordinating the edits of these books. And we have like observations now. The first 5 volumes of Observations are so much better than they were previously. Almost infinitely superior to the first iterations of them. And then the way now, I've now received 3 volumes of Observations. 3 of the 5 have actually arrived here at my home in the new look from Amazon. And I've received the first 2 volumes of Coming Home and Written in Stone. They're just gorgeous. The print inside is so much larger, and it's set up so much more professionally, and the covers are consistent. They're really gorgeous. For the first time, I can say, I'd feel good. I'm not embarrassed about somebody wanting one of those books and reading them now. This is Yahowah laid out for you. And we've Mike has taken on this project. Mike Bellotti, taken on this project of after everybody read everything. We had so many editors that contributed. And I devoted so much of my life to rewriting Observations, for example. It became 5 volumes. Do you know that he went back and read every word of all 5 volumes? And on top of that, if I made a statement that, I would think, okay, that's pretty obscure, but trying to explain something. He looked up every statement that I made just to validate that I was accurate with my math or completely accurate with the statement. Every translation to say, I can't get that. How did you go there? Just amazing, the devotion of people who are part of Yahowah's family.
I hope he didn't become an art critic.
No. I made a statement about Mike, and I said I like him because he's really blunt and saying that you're just wrong. You challenge something that I said. I view it delightfully. I mean, I love his approach. I love his edits. I'm glad that he's a critic.
That's a lot of work.
I'm so delighted when he finds a mistake and we can correct it. But we have a committed family. Molly and all of it devoted edits and
Jackie. I talked to Jackie a lot.
And JK, There's so much that has gone into these, and I think we're now on the 8th chapter of Yada Yah. Plus, there were 4 introductory chapters, so we're like 12 chapters into Yada Yah. It's going much slower than the edits did of Observations, because I'm concerned this will be the first thing that people read. And my translations were, even though that had went through 7 edit passes, the translations weren't very good. I made some. The commentary wasn't all that good, and so it's really slow because it's like I'm writing this all over again. But it's really fun because I'm seeing things I just missed and how.
We have new eyes now too with those.
Yeah, I have new eyes. And one of the things that I saw is that, like the 4th day, I thought the 4th day was the greater and lesser light, where Yosha coming on the 4th day, and the lesser light was Hasatan. But when you read it, both of these lights are positive. There's something marvelous about what God does with the greater and lesser light. And He teaches us through both the greater and lesser light. And I said, I think I was wrong when I said that, the greater light was Yosha and fulfilling on the 4th day, and the lesser light was Satan. It was still, light, but lesser. No. The lesser and greater light, or Dode and Yosha? Dode's the greater light.
Well, and so he's a reflection of Yahweh, because it's all the light reflects on him.
Absolutely. He's coming back as brilliant as the sun. The lesser light, who still is a marvelous contribution, is the Lamb. The shepherd is the greater light, the Lamb is the lesser light. And it's exactly as Yahweh. He wants his son, he wants his shepherd to be the most brilliant light in the universe. That's what dads do. To the extent that Yahweh provided the Passover lamb, it's a one-and-done thing, and the last thing that Yahweh's going to want to do is to magnify that. But he will magnify his relationship with Dode. And so the greater light is Dode. And it's interesting that the fourth day begins with Dode, and it ends with Yosha. Huh. So it's the stuff you can learn as you go through. So indeed, this is the next line, and we'll repeat this since we're no longer broadcasting; we're still recording.
Oh, okay.
We'll repeat this for next week, but I'll just share it. We'll give something, food for thought. Indeed, Dode said, "My house is not appropriate, neither fitting and proper with God. And yet, by contrast, he has constituted and facilitated an everlasting family covenant relationship for me to approach. It is properly ordered and suitably structured in every way and readily observable because it is totally of my freedom and salvation in addition to everything I desire. Will he not cause it to branch out and grow?" Samuel, listen to him, 2 Samuel 23:5. And I'm going to just make the commentary light tonight, and we'll bring this up next week.
Okay.
Dode is acknowledging that his home is a human, not appropriate or fitting for God. What he's saying, though, is that the family that God has conceived, the family that's important, is the covenant. So even Dode having this magnificent home, having been chosen by God to have a house right down the ridgeline from his, and bless this man in every possible way, Dode is saying, no, it's not about my house. It's about the covenant. And Dode is actually acknowledging that the covenant was created for him. And remember, I constantly say everything that Dode says applies to us.
Uh-huh.
So that means that, Kirk, you can say the covenant was created for you.
Well, it's the only way to get home. So if you want to get home, it's created for you.
Right. And so Dode is acknowledging that he's the living embodiment of the covenant. The covenant relationship was created for him.
Personalized.
And that,
absolutely.
Right. That here's the man that was the King of Kings, God's most important and chosen person. And he's saying, my house is irrelevant. It's Yahweh's house that matters. All of these prominent people that have built magnificent mansions for themselves, or the Egyptians. They all, the pharaohs viewed themselves as the house of God.
Yeah.
The great house. Pharaoh, I think, is what it means. The great house. Mm-hmm. And Dode is saying, and he's the King of Kings. And he said, my house is not what matters. It's not appropriate for God. It's not fitting for God. What's fitting for God is that he constituted and facilitated an everlasting family covenant relationship for me. If the bereth is Dode's recognition, Dode's appreciation of the family that matters, and he had easily the greatest home of all humans, literally on the ridgeline by Yah. And he's saying, no, it's not mine. And Yahweh has a lot to say about the house of Dod. And all really favorable and important. And Dod is saying, no, it's not about my house. It's about Yahweh's house, his family, his covenant.
Yeah.
That the covenant is properly ordered. It's suitable. It's properly arranged, clearly formatted. It's prepared. It's correctly organized. It's befitting in every possible way. And it's readily observable, shamar, easily explained for those who are careful in their consideration. And that it is literally the expression of Yasha, of freedom, of deliverance, of liberation, of salvation, in addition to everything we could possibly desire.
So Dod comes across as always more about everyone else than him, which is, I mean, this is King of Kings and the Messiah, but everything about him is Yahweh's family. I mean,
Correct.
that's totally, that is not
Yeah,
an
but he's being
egomaniac.
very personable here. He's saying, this is my position in Yahweh's family. This is how I view Yahweh's family. And that's the thing that's so important. Yahweh called Dod the shepherd.
Yeah.
Well, sheep ought to follow their shepherd. Dod is somebody we should follow as Yahweh's chosen shepherd.
Makes sense
right?
to me.
So he is
absolutely.
saying Yahweh's covenant is all that matters. Yahweh's covenant is suitably structured. It's easy to understand. It's readily observable. And it's all about liberation and freedom. Not about worship. It's not about laws. It's not about being subjugated. It's not about submission. No. The covenant was structured to be readily observable and totally liberating. It is the essence of all we could possibly desire.
Well said, my friend. Well said.
Well, that's what Dod said.
That's what he said. I know.
And he's
you quote good.
Yeah. If you can
Dod,
properly
okay.
translate and share what Dod said, it's well said. Yeah. That's isn't that the essence of all of these books, of all of these shows? Is
Absolutely.
to have it well said, because we're sharing what was said.
Yes.
But the only thing we're doing beyond saying this is what God inspired these men to share with us is that we're celebrating these words. We're looking at these at this testimony as the source of life, the means to approach God, and everything that we can glean from them, we want people to understand. We want
absolutely.
the Spirit to inspire us to share what's important for everyone to know about the Creator of the universe, and why this man loved him and why he loved this man, and how we can be in exactly the same position. When God said that Dod is as brilliant as the sun, that means that any one of the covenant's children, we too will be as brilliant as the sun. Now, we're not going to be as brilliant as the sun during Sukkah on earth, but we will absolutely have the same power and enlightenment and brilliance of the sun when we are expanded to 7 dimensions, because the sun, while it is a massive entity, and whether we're in a 4 or 7 or 6-dimensional universe, and the sun is a massive part of that, but it's one of 400 billion stars and 400 billion galaxies. But it's a brilliant big thing, and our 6-dimensional universe, if it is indeed 6. But the moment that God elevates us to 7, the sun is puny. Being as brilliant as the sun is actually a slight once you're 7 dimensional.
I was going to say,
It does. It's a pejorative.
I know. You got it right away.
Yeah. 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 In fact, even being said, you're as brilliant as 100 billion suns in 100 billion galaxies. It's still a slight for a subdimensional.
Kick it up another notch, pal.
Yeah, it'd be like saying that Walt Disney was as bright and as big and as influential as all the characters he created in Flatland with his cartoons. I'm sorry, but you put them all together, they're no Walt. All the suns and all the essence of this universe collectively will be inferior to what we are individually when we're taken to the seventh dimension.
Wow. That's hard to wrap your head around and try to figure out what that actually is going to be like.
It is. It gets you beyond the doldrums of, I've got a tropical storm that'll soon be a hurricane that's bearing down on me, and you have fires that are swirling all around, and we're living in the world of stupid reactions to a virus. But
for a while we get to be in Dode's world. That's
yes, we do. We do. And that's the only world that matters. It's my home may be inferior in every possible way, but by comparison to the covenant, which is the home that I have chosen to belong, the covenant's perfect. It's properly structured, easily observable. It's everything that I could ever desire. And so who really cares about the rest of this stuff, other than to point it out so people realize that everything of man is flawed and corrupt, and you need to walk away from it so that you can take advantage of being part of the covenant. Right, exactly. Yeah. All right, Kirk, I'm glad you were able to join us. I know that you were right there at the end trying to take care of Terry. Wish all the best to you and to Terry, and may God bless everyone who is listening live, as well as to those who listened online, as well as those who will listen to the archives. And we appreciate you and love being part of this family. May God bless you all.
Okay, well, be safe. Shalom.
Shalom.